Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Enemy Season defense matches. I didn't really change much for the defense this week, outside of getting several marches for Edelgard thanks to the Hero Fest banner. The extra stats should help her be a much more effective wall overall, and they might also let me experiment a bit with replacing close defense in the future. I'd like to give her something that helps her be a bit more of a threat offensively as well as defensively. There were a couple of matches this week that made me decide to remove the bolt trap from the layout. It's been an awkward element of the defense for a while. I honestly really regret upgrading it. So I'm just going to see if taking it off the field has any noticeable impacts. Overall, the defense held up pretty well, despite a few clean losses. It's good to see, though those losses do have me still thinking about ways to keep improving the defense. I think I've kind of pinpointed what went wrong with them, so I'm not too worried overall. So let's get to the first match. This was a fun way to start the week off. I don't really see a whole lot of Shinen as an AR carry, although I think his kit's actually really good for it. And backing him up with a Valoria and Lucina to enable an almost immediate Aether counterattack is a really good way to help him just break through anything that attacks into him, and sustain as well. It's a really cool combo overall, and Fjorm is great, as always, just for isolation. They take a couple of turns to set up here, just waiting for the bolt tower to go off. And once they get in position, they're ready to start this fight. I'm not too sure why they really waited for the bolt tower, because they didn't end up using the damage from it. And unfortunately, baiting here doesn't actually work out so well for them.
You've shown your weakness.
I don't think they were expecting Felix to handle Shinen quite this well, but the guard effect stops Aether from going off, and then he can't survive the follow-up when they surrender. This was a really interesting match to see, just because it got to highlight a pretty rarely seen interaction with rallies and the 7th unit. They brought a very cool team too. I actually think Valoria is a great support unit for a tank, because not only can she support any tank instead of just a physical unit like Brave Lucina, but she actually makes a very competent off-tank on her own, especially with Flame backing her up. They take a couple of turns to move into position here, making sure they isolate Mirabilis to try and shut down the rally trap. And they're trying to do here is bait the map into moving without really taking much of a hit for it. And they do successfully get part of the map to move, but this doesn't actually activate the map, because the only units at this point who can actually attack Ike have both used their actions. And as you can see here, the map isn't actually activated right now, so I think this really took them off guard, and they were expecting things to start moving. Unfortunately, by the time things start moving, they're in a much more awkward position than they wanted to be. And Deliwit gets to Gale Force through Valoria and pick up a knockout on Flame.
Mother, soon.
And Dorothy actually just barely manages to secure a knockout on Reagan, thanks to Wings of Mercy. And while no one else can catch up, it's not looking so good for them anymore. I can finish off Elliowood without any problems. And Altina doesn't have any issues with Dorothea either.
By these twin blades.
But they're already down two pretty important supports. And once Rhajat gets danced forward, Ike is not going to have a good time with this.
Hope you like hell.
I left an opening.
Edelgard swaps her back to safety, and, well, at this point there's not much they can do, so they surrender and move on. This was another interesting one to see. I think these double save teams are extremely strong overall, especially when one of them is a maxed out Hector. I do like the Steady Breath Gustav as well. I think getting to use Bonfire immediately on Retaliation is actually really important, especially against impact users. And the Plumeria and Flame are actually a really excellent combination of supports for them, thanks to the Rain and Plumeria's weapon, and of course just the damage reduction from Flame. It all combines to make this a very effective save ball. They don't take too long getting in position, just move in with Flame as the frontline bait. Elliowood gets danced forward, but he's not really going to get a whole lot done to Gustav here, unfortunately. And, well, Felix does have trouble with Hector as well.
Prepare to die!
Getting danced just ends up getting him knocked out, which is unfortunate to see.
Do I look merry?
It's one of the reasons I'd like to try and have a way to get Rhajat to this side of the map a little quicker, if I update the layout. I can clean up Elliowood pretty easily with Reagan here too. And just pull her back and scooch the save ball forward. This is where things ended up getting a little tricky for them though. Since none of the team can actually attack without getting knocked out on the counter, Rhajat's going to be the first one to move in and hit. And that disables counterattacks for the entire team. And while Gustav is pretty resilient, especially considering his type advantage against Saros, letting Saros just attack in for free like this multiple times over is going to wear him down eventually. And then Edelgard gets to move in and finish him off.
Alphonse, forgive me.
And she can do this just because his guard effect stopped actually working below 25%. And then Saros just kind of deletes Flame.
Soon.
Yeah, and losing those two is enough for them to concede. This was another save strategy. And another maxed out Brave Hector, for that matter. They even brought a Micaiah along too, with Sturdy Impact and Lull and all the merges. It's a pretty impressive team. The Fire Sweep Altino was also a really interesting touch. I'm not too sure what the Fire Sweep Double Poison Strike is for. Maybe just to break enemy save armor balls. I was actually very surprised to see them just go in like this. I thought they'd at least try to snipe Felix first. And it doesn't actually end up going so well for them. Leaving Gustav exposed like this means that Hollywood can attack him directly, which also lets Lunge activate, and pull him directly onto that bolt trap. And when he's out of range of Hector, Rhajat has no problems jumping in to finish him off. Which, of course, lets Felix go in and pick off Hector.
This is your name on it.
This is one of those times that I actually liked having the bolt trap around. It did a lot for us here. But I don't know if it's good enough for the rare moments that it actually works like this to keep it around to be exploited the way some of the other matches did. They do keep going a little bit here. Alpina can finish Hollywood off without any problems, but they're going to have a bit of a hard time finishing the entire team off. Especially when Reagan can't actually break through Felix. This was an interesting match to see. I hadn't seen a legendary Sigurd on an offense team yet, and I think this is actually a really neat way to use him. They also brought Gunther with her freshly remixed kit, and a duo peony just to enable even more hit-and-run type options. I do think this is actually a really interesting idea for a hit-and-run approach. Sigurd and Reagan are really good at it together. Sigurd can enable a 4 movement range for Reagan, even though she doesn't get 4 movement from Kanto afterwards. Just having 4 movement to run in is already extremely strong. They get going pretty early and attack into Edelgard with Sigurd.
Withdraw your blade.
No mercy.
But he can't quite finish her off.
I'll cut my own path.
Which forces them to use Reagan to do it instead.
This is it for you.
And while they can Kento out from here, they do end up needing to use both dances to get out. And Sigurd's kind of left exposed out here. And once the dance comes through, he's left to deal with Hollywood.
There is nothing to fear.
And he can't quite one-shot Elliot on the counter, so Elliot gets Gale Force and drag him onto this bolt trap. Which lets him one-shot Gunther really easily.
Norm, I'm sorry.
And then Rhajat gets to move in and put down Sigurd.
I fall.
Sadly, no one else gets to get in range of the enemy team, but that's enough for them to surrender anyway. This was quite a team to see. It's pretty all in on this Wings of Mercy chain. And, well, I can't really blame them. It's very well put together overall. The only unit on this entire team without Wings of Mercy is Reagan, and, well, she has Kanto and cavalry movement to help move around the map anyway. This one, I'll be honest, I'm not sure how they would have approached this if they hadn't had this bolt trap to enable their entire strategy. They take a turn just to clear out the structures and test the traps. This part is also why I'm still thinking about a way to try and threaten a little bit more of this front area, just to make it a little harder to clear out all of these structures behind the fortress. Nope. Once their Wings of Mercy chain is enabled, they can just make sure everything gets tested and get back out without any problems. This was really well played, honestly, but like I said, I don't think this works at all unless they have a bolt trap to enable it. But once they do, it's easy enough to get Reagan in to take out Dorothea, which disables the duo's hindrance and lets them just move in with everything else. And once Felix is down, Lynn can just have an absolute party with everything else.
Accept your punishment. Oh, Lynn, you're a wonder.
And then they can just retreat out of range of the rest and let them move out of position. And without dancers, it's not like we can really catch up to this, so...
Go for it.
Yeah, and unfortunately no follow-up isn't doing much for Ceres in this situation. They do some more maneuvering. I think they want to pick the pot up here, so... which is completely reasonable. There's no reason to leave that behind. And Double Mackay is actually a really good way to try and beat any of the save armor strategies that people try to use on defenses.
Accept your punishment.
And Lynn can clean up the match. This one was pretty unfortunate to see right after the last one. They brought along a +10 Vantage Close Counter Blarblade May. It's been a while since I've seen a Close Counter Vantage Blade Tome strategy, and it works out really well for them here. The combination of Reagan and Daltina gives her a lot more one-shot potential, and Seteth's a great way to just enable the weapon completely while also providing her with some extra support if she needs it. I'll be honest, even though this was the match that convinced me to just pull the bolt trap out of my defense, I don't think removing the bolt trap would have done it on its own. I think that it also would have required sniping this bolt tower. Since without the bolt tower, May would have had a much harder time actually getting through Felix in the first place. But as is, they can just swap her forward and have her finish him off. And from there it's very easy for her to move over and pick off Rhajat as well. I think they might have been trying to take out Edelgard with Reagan here, but it's not quite gonna work. So they just pull back instead. It's not like May has any problems handling Dorothea. And even though Eliwood does get danced forward, he just can't quite survive May. Giving him a lull would have actually let him survive this. And, well, it's another reason to think about giving him one of those. Cleaning up from here isn't too bad. Altina can handle Edelgard without many issues, and Mirabilis isn't much of a threat to her either.
Goddess, guide me.
And, well, once Ceres is stuck there on her own, there's not a lot she's gonna get done here. They do maneuver in to get one of these ether pods, but they can't actually pick up the second one, and they just have Reagan take out Ceres.
I don't
It's
think
actually
so.
really close. And again, the damage reduction instead of no follow-up would have done a lot more work here, but it's okay. This one was a bit of a relief to see after losing the last couple of matches. I was starting to get a bit worried about the defense. They have an actually really interesting team here, using Ike as a melee specialist with Hectors as a far save unit for him. I'm not entirely sure why they are using Lucina as a support, since Ike and Hector both already have a breath effect thanks to Steady Breath and Special Fighter. But she does enable Altina at least. And Flame's a great support for all three. They get into position right away, but without a near save unit, it's actually pretty easy for Eliwood to rally forward and just pick up an easy Gale Force on Flame.
Soon.
Before going and then knocking out Altina as well.
No backing down. No, but how?
Sadly, Felix can't get a whole lot done against Hector, but he does get to survive Hector, which is good. Sadly, the same can't be said for Dorothea, who gets baited pretty hard by her Wings of Mercy.
Clear a path!
I'm not entirely sure why they moved the way they did here, and kind of forgot about Reagan.
Not good enough.
It could have just been a misclick, honestly, or they were just rattled by losing units. But one way or another, it means that Eliwood gets a pretty easy knockout
look merry?
on her. And now that he's gotten his bonfire charged, Felix can actually finish Hector off. And Rhajat doesn't have any problems just wiping Lucina out.
Sorry.
Ike can survive from here, since the only ones who attack him are Felix and Ceres afterwards. But at the same time, he's left pretty low, and he's the only remaining survivor on his team. So that's enough for them to surrender and move on. This was another interesting one to see. They brought along a Micaiah, and interestingly didn't pair her up with the Layla. They paired Layla up with Raken instead, which I think is actually a really great way to enable some hit and run approaches, since it gives Raken a lot more flexibility with how to use Kanto. And of course, well, Micaiah is always very good at punching through Felix, especially with the help of that lane 4 bolt tower. They spent the first couple of turns picking off the structures and getting into position, while they wait for that bolt tower to activate. And to test that fake trap, just to make sure that Micaiah can run forward and pick off Felix. They decide to isolate Eliwood to make sure the rally trap won't go off, which is a really good idea a lot of the time. since, well, Eliwood's got the longest movement range, and usually the longest threat range of anyone on the team. Unfortunately for them, Rhajat ends up tracking Raken, I think, here, which lets Mirabilis aerobatics forward and dance Saros. And once Saros gets danced, Micaiah is not going to have a good time.
Will forgive me.
Layla's Dragon effectiveness lets her do a chunk, but she can't actually finish off Saros. And I'm not sure if Raken could either, which might be why they surrendered here. This was a pretty interesting match to see. They brought a maxed out Norne along with Legion Bow and Bonus Doubler, which is a skill that has really fallen off in popularity shortly after it was released. Just because of how common panic effects are and lulls. Although, as long as you can avoid those panics and lulls, it's still a really strong skill, so... It is odd, though, to see two ranged tanks using it on the same team. They spent a couple of turns moving into position and testing this bolt trap. I think hoping for desperation to get activated is mostly just a luxury for them here. They're just trying to get rid of it so that Brunnya has a safe path forward to knock out Felix after the bolt tower activates. They do a pretty good job of pulling back after that, but without an isolation effect, it's very easy for Eliwood to get danced forward here. Sadly, he one-shots Plumeria, so
I knew
no
it.
Gale Force this time. But even that one attack is enough to panic Norne's buffs, and with those reversed, it's actually pretty easy for Rhajat to pick up this knockout.
Ta! You're still here? Oops.
They decided to keep going here. Brunnya can take out Dorothea without any issues. Especially with Felix out of the way, so there's no far save to worry about. But this was a bit of an awkward move to make. I think they might just not have been looking at the combat forecast and been hoping to have Naga pick off Mirabilis.
Such.
But Edelgard was there with close save, so... yeah. And, well, from there things fall apart very quickly for them.
No.
Eliwood
But
can
how?
handle Altina. And Rhajat gets to step over and pick off Raken.
Not good enough.
And, well, even with a very defensive kit, Brunya's not going to have good time against Edelgard.
You can't stop me. Your Highness.
This was a pretty unfortunate way to finish the week. They brought along a maxed out Brave Ike, who's, I think, Null Sea and Pulse Smoke and Quick Riposte is an excellent set to help him deal with the problems in Astra seasons. And the fully merged Brave Lucino is interesting to see too. Most people usually just leave her at a low merge instead. Fury's always a good option for slowing things down as well, or just preventing follow-ups entirely. And this +7 Reagan with chill defense is pretty important to their fear here as well. They start things off right away, just shoving Ike into range. And unfortunately, Rhajat's just not quite fast enough at this kind of emerge level and investment level to double a knight that's this far up. And Snellsea means he's not too concerned about the flash effect.
I will defeat you!
And unfortunately, Rhajat's also just, I think, about 2 points of attack short of one-shotting this Reagan. That really just comes down to some merges and flowers, or even just giving her sturdy impact. So... and it's easy enough for Lucina to finish her off there. And I can take out Felix, and then they can shove him forward to intercept the rest of the team. I'm not too worried about Gale Force here. Elwood has gets pulse smoked, so he can't activate it on his own, and Dorothea doesn't damage she's not going to dance Elwood either.
I will defeat you!
Ike actually gets very close to being knocked out here. A couple of times over. But he does pull through. I'm not sure if they mathed this out, but if they did, I definitely applaud their commitment to it, because personally I really don't like it when units drop that low.
This is it for you.
And with her debuffs cleansed off by Fjorn, and the chill defense that hits Edelgard, Reagan can actually punch through Edelgard here, which lets them clear out the near save. And without that, Lucina can finish Elliot off. And once Ike takes out Mirabilis, there's not much left that can really threaten him, even when he's this low. Especially when Dorothea actually gets baited forward by Lucina. And then there's one last pulse shave. Ike gets dropped to a single hit point before finishing Sarah's off. And Lucina can just close it out by knocking Dorothy out. Overall, in spite of the unfortunate losses along the way, I think the defense actually held up really well this week. And it's good to see things holding out against some of the nastier combinations of offense teams, and the losses are a good way to show me what I need to work on. I do think that investing more in Rhajat is going to help a lot when I manage it, and I'm interested to see how pulling the Bolt Trap out does over the next couple of weeks. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.